Why do we care about the water chemistry in our aquaponics system?
Oh.
Yeah, all right, so we care about water chemistry and water in general because we're looking for clean water to drink also. And if we want to drink clean water, our fish probably want to live in decent water as well. Any other ideas?
You say why we care about water?
It helps the animals. It helps the plants. It's important to our plants too because we're going to be growing plants. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do today is we need to learn the nitrogen cycle because the nitrogen cycle is one of the most important cycles that our plants go through and that our fish and our plants go through together in our aquaponic systems. So before we send you guys off to do a little bit of research in your groups about other things that are important to water chemistry, we are going to start with this cycle.
So we got to draw pictures?
So you don't have to draw the pictures. I've got the picture. You are going to take notes on here so that you can reference it. Because we are going to use the information that we collect today and the research that you do today and tomorrow to get you guys ready to actually do some water testing to get us ready to start taking care of our fish.
Hey, this is key, guys. Hey, if you can get this cycle down, if you understand this, you're going to have a lot more fun with your aquaponics system, right? Because you're going to understand better how it's operated, right? And what's making it work.
So, to get started, the first thing we have to look at is where does the nitrogen even come from in our system? So, how do our fish get nutrients if they're sitting in a fish tank?
There you go.
Well, how do they survive?
Water.
Well, they have their water. What else do they need? They need food. Where does that food come from? Us. All right. So the first thing that we are going to put in here, actually, is that the nitrogen is introduced to our system through the food that we feed our fish. So the first thing I want you to write up here is that nitrogen is introduced to the system through fish food. All right, so nitrogen is introduced to the system through the fish food. So after the fish eat their food, what do? They poop. They go to the bathroom. So does anybody remember or have any idea what the chemical is that comes out in fish waste?
No.
So ammonia is excreted as fish waste. Now, do you think ammonia is good for the fish? No. Because what is ammonia used for? Like when we use ammonia? Cleaning. So do you think pouring a bunch of cleaning products in your tanks is going to be good for everything? No. So I want you to write down that ammonia is very toxic to fish. So if we know this is a cycle, we're going to start making some connections here. So the first thing that we get here is that nitrogen comes into our system through our fish food. And our fish excrete that ammonia. Okay? So the second step that we're going to put in here now is, have any of you guys taken a look in the greenhouse there? You know that big tank that we have underneath where the plants grow? What sort of stuff do you see in that tank? You guys can speak up. So what sorts of things did you notice? Yeah, there's some little blue balls in there. They're called bioballs. Does anybody remember ever hearing what those do? No? Those grow bacteria on them. Now, what have we learned about bacteria? Are all bacteria bad?
No.
No. What are some good bacteria that we've learned about? Think about it in our own bodies. Do you guys remember what we talked about where the good bacteria live in our bodies? Anybody? They help us digest our food. Okay? So there are good bacteria in our bodies. There are also good bacteria that help the fish. So there's a type of bacteria called nitrosomonas bacteria. And those bacteria help convert that ammonia into a chemical called nitrite. That's good? Yeah? to our plants, we go right back into ammonia is excreted from the fish, and this is just a continuous cycle that happens in our tank all the time. Now, I'm going to give you guys some chemical formulas. When you start doing your research, you might find that they don't always write ammonia, nitrite, or nitrate. They might write the chemical formula for it. Be nice to each other. So ammonia is NH3. What does the N stand for? Anybody remember? Nitrogen. What does the H stand for? Hydrogen. Excellent. All right. So then we have nitrite. Guys, you're almost done with notes. Nitrite is NO2. What does the O stand for? Oxygen. Perfect. And what does the 2 stand for here? What does that mean?
Water.
Well, here it is H2O, so there's 2 hydrogens in water. So if it's O2, what does that mean? How many oxygens are there?
2.
2. Perfect. All right. Nitrate is NO3. So those are some of the formulas you may run into as you're doing your research. So now, how many of you guys have had fish tank at home?
Me.
All right. Your fish died after a couple days. When you went to the pet store to buy your fish, did they say, hey, why don't you just buy like 20 or 30 fish and just toss them in the tank all at once? No, what do they tell you? No, I thought you did give up. How many fish do you start with? Do you start with as many fish as you can end up with? No, you start with just a couple of fish, right, Jonathan? Yeah. So why do you think you only start with a couple of fish? Okay. All right. So think about it in terms of ammonia levels. When you have a brand new clean tank and there's been no fish living in it, do you have any ammonia in there?
No.
No. So if you put a whole bunch of fish in, what's going to happen to the amount of ammonia? It's going to be a lot. What's going to happen to the fish? They're going to die. Because if you get too much ammonia at once, that filter's not even going to be able to fix it. So you add a few fish at a time, and you let a little bit of ammonia get into the system. Now, do you think that bacteria always exists in the tank right from the beginning? It kind of does. You can get bacteria added. So like when we start our little tanks for you guys, we're going to give you each some of the bioballs from the big system. We're going to get you guys started with bacteria. Okay? But can those bacteria, is this like an instantaneous process, do you think? No, it takes a little time. So after you have your fish for a few days and your ammonia starts to build up and you do a water test, what are you going to see after you see high ammonia levels? What's the next thing you think is going to get to be a high level? Nitrite. Nitrite. So in a brand new tank, your ammonia level is going to be really high. And then as your ammonia starts to drop, your nitrite is going to get really high. And then as your nitrate starts to drop, what do you think is going to start to come up? Nitrate. Okay? So you can kind of tell a little bit about how old the tank is based on your test set. Okay? And our goal is to get our tanks to the point where we're not having a lot of ammonia. We want to get ammonia to 0. A healthy tank has no ammonia in it. So it takes a little time. Well, that's what we're going to practice when we get started with our fish tank. So, does everybody have everything on here now? Make sense? So make sure that you keep this in your folder, because we are going to need to reference this again. You guys have a couple of projects coming up, and they do reference this chart.
Hey, so what's the only thing we put in the system? What's the only input? Huh? Not ammonia. What's the only thing we add to the system?
Water.
Well, besides water.
Once we get it set up, what's the only thing we add?
Fish.
Yeah. So once we add the fish, that's good. We have the tank, we have the fish, we have the water, we have the plant. Once it's going, what's the only input that we add? Fish food. Right? So if somebody asks you, where does this cycle start? That's the only input, right? That's the only thing we put in. And from that fish food, that initiates the whole cycle, right?
Okay. All right. So the sheet that we gave you, in addition to doing the regular tests of ammonia, nitrate, pH, and temperature, we are also going to be testing some other things in the water because plants need more than nitrate to grow successfully. So you guys are going to do some research now. You're going to look up what is mineral iron and why it's important. You're going to look at what is chlorine. And do you think chlorine is going to be good for our fish or not? So you guys are going to do a little bit of research to find out what chlorine does to fish tanks. There's also something called chloride. So you guys are going to need to look up and tell us what's the difference between chlorine and chloride and what does that have to do. You also are going to need to check out You're going to look at what are